There is a letter that was written before you were born, and it has your name on it. Not a name given to you by the world, not the name people call when they need something from you, but the name written in the place where your purpose was first spoken into existence. This letter has been traveling towards you for a long time, and today, on this particular day, in this particular moment, it has finally arrived. Dear chosen one, I need you to know something before we go any further. I need you to know that the life you are living right now, the one that looks manageable from the outside, the one where you show up and you smile and you answer the messages and you keep going, that life is carrying something underneath it that most people cannot see. And I am not writing to you about the version of you that other people see. I am writing to you about the version of you that sits in the quiet after everyone else has gone to sleep. The one who stares at the ceiling and wonders if any of this is going in the right direction. The one who has prayed the same prayer so many times that the words have started to feel worn smooth, like a stone that has been held too long. I know that version of you, and that is exactly the one this message is for. You have been told, in 100 different ways, that patience is a virtue. You have nodded along. You have believed it, or at least tried to. But there is a difference between understanding patience as a concept and living it as a reality, day after day, when the thing you are waiting for has not yet shown its face. And if you are honest, deeply honest, there are moments when the waiting does not feel virtuous at all. It feels like something closer to invisibility. Like you are standing in a room where everyone else seems to be moving forward, and you are standing still, and you cannot explain why. And you are not sure anymore whether standing still is faith, or whether it is something you are doing wrong. This letter is here to tell you that you are not doing anything wrong. But more than that, this letter is here to identify you. Because not everyone reading these words right now is in the same place. Some people are curious, some people are browsing. But there is a specific group of people for whom this message was prepared. And if you belong to that group, you will know it by what you are about to recognize in yourself. Here are the signs. The first sign is that your dreams have become more vivid and more specific in recent months. Not frightening, but layered, like they are trying to show you something that your waking mind has not been ready to receive. You wake from them, and the feeling lingers longer than it used to. The second sign is that you have begun to feel a frustration that you cannot fully explain to anyone around you. It is not anger at a specific person. It is not sadness about a specific event. It is a deep, low hum of something unresolved, something that tells you the life you are living has not yet fully matched the life you were made for, and the gap between those two things is growing harder to ignore. The third sign is that you have started to feel out of place in spaces that used to feel comfortable. Conversations that used to satisfy you now leave you feeling empty. Relationships that once felt anchoring now feel like they are holding you in place rather than holding you up. You have not said this out loud to anyone because you do not want to seem ungrateful, but you have felt it. The fourth sign is that something keeps drawing you back to your faith, even in the moments when your faith feels the smallest it has ever been. There is a pull, a thread, something that will not let you walk completely away, even when part of you has wanted to. And the fifth sign, the one that perhaps fits most quietly and most precisely, is this. You are still here. You have not given up. You have questioned everything. You have cried more than most people know. You have had conversations with God in the dark that you would never repeat in polite company, but you are still here, still showing up, still holding on to something you cannot fully name. That is not weakness. That is the mark of someone who has been chosen for something that requires a particular kind of strength to carry. Beloved, this message did not find you by accident. In a world of endless content and scrolling and noise, something brought you here to sift to these words on this specific day. Heaven does not waste moments like that. There is a reason this arrived when it did. There is a reason it did not arrive sooner, and there is a reason it is arriving now. You may not understand the timing yet, but the timing is not random. You are not a person who got left behind. You are not a person whose prayers have been ignored. You are not a person who believed the wrong things or loved the wrong way or tried too hard in the wrong direction. You are a person who has been in a season of preparation so deep and so specific that most of the world around you could not recognize it because they were not made to recognize it. Only you could feel it from the inside, and only now is the outside beginning to catch up. There is something coming for you, not someday in the abstract, not eventually, in the way people say eventually when they mean they are not sure. Something specific, something that has your name on it, the same name that was written before you were born, the name spoken in the place where your purpose was first decided. And the reason this letter is arriving today is because the distance between where you are and where that thing is has finally closed enough for you to feel it. You have not been waiting for this moment. This moment has been waiting for you. You already know what it feels like to carry something no one else can see. You have been carrying it for so long that some days it no longer feels like a burden. It just feels like you. Like the weight has become so familiar that you have stopped noticing where you end and where it begins. But I want to stop here before we go any further into what is coming, and I want to do something that almost no one has done for you in this season. I want to name what you have actually been feeling, not the version you tell people when they ask how you are doing, not the summarized, cleaned up, I am trusting God version that you offer in the hallway after service or in the group chat when someone checks in. I want to name the real thing, the thing underneath, because you deserve to have someone speak it out loud, and because the truth is that you cannot move fully forward from a place that has never been fully seen. So, let me see you. There is a first sign that people in this particular season of waiting will recognize immediately, and it arrives without warning. It is a sudden wave of sadness about the past, not about a specific mistake or a specific loss, but about time itself. It comes in ordinary moments. You might be washing dishes, or driving a familiar road, or sitting in a meeting that has nothing to do with anything sacred, and something will brush past you like a current of cold air, and you will feel, just for a moment, the full weight of how long you have been waiting. How many seasons have come and gone? How many New Year mornings you have greeted with the same hope and watched fade into the same familiar stillness by March? That sadness is not a sign that your faith is failing. It is a sign that you are human and that you have genuinely given something to this journey. The grief is proportional to the investment. You would not grieve time if you had not spent that time believing in something real. The second sign is this. Familiar places and familiar people have begun to feel heavy in a way they did not used to. A friendship that once felt easy now requires something from you that you cannot quite name. A routine that once felt grounding now feels like a loop. A church, a neighborhood, a relationship, something that was once a source of comfort has begun to feel like it belongs to a version of you that is no longer fully who you are. And instead of being able to explain this, you find yourself going quiet, pulling back slightly, spending a little more time alone than before, not because you have become antisocial, but because the noise of trying to fit into spaces that no longer fit you has become louder than you can manage. This is disorienting. it is supposed to be. When a person is being repositioned, the old environment will naturally begin to feel misaligned. The discomfort you are feeling is not a sign that something is wrong with where you are. It is a sign that where you are is no longer where you belong. The third sign will land quietly because it lives in the place between sleep and waking. You have been having a recurring dream or a recurring feeling within your dreams of a door that has not yet opened. Sometimes it appears literally, a door at the end of a hallway, a door in a room you do not recognize, a door that you stand before and somehow know matters enormously, and you wake before it opens. Other times, it is not a literal door, but a feeling of threshold, of standing at the edge of something significant, of being almost inside something you cannot yet name. This dream is not anxiety dressed in spiritual clothing. It is your deeper self, the part of you that operates below the level of conscious thought, communicating what your waking mind already suspects. You are standing at the edge of something. The door is real, and the fact that you keep dreaming it means you have not stopped believing it will open. The fourth sign is perhaps the strangest one, and also the one that will feel most confirming. The same message keeps finding you through different mouths, in different places, at different times. A verse you were not looking for appears in a caption someone posted. A stranger says something in a conversation that has nothing to do with faith that sounds exactly like the answer to a question you prayed last Tuesday. A song plays in a coffee shop and the lyric lands on your chest like a hand. A video finds you. A message finds you. Again and again, the same essential truth arriving through completely unrelated channels, as though heaven is using every available frequency to make sure you receive what is being sent. This is not coincidence. Coincidence does not repeat itself with this kind of precision. This is alignment. This is the universe, orchestrated by the hand of God, surrounding you with confirmation, because you are in a moment that requires you to be absolutely sure of what you are about to step into. Now, I want to speak to something more specific, something more personal, something that you may have told yourself is too small or too ordinary to bring before God: the insomnia. The nights when your body is exhausted, but your mind will not stop rehearsing everything that is unresolved. The way 2 in the morning has become oddly familiar, not because you chose it, but because something in you will not let the day close until you have turned the same questions over one more time. The loneliness that lives not in the absence of people, but in the middle of them. The particular ache of being surrounded and still feeling unseen. The feeling of being wronged by circumstances you did not choose, of watching people who seem less prepared, less sincere, less committed receive things you have been quietly working toward for years. And the feeling of being misunderstood, not maliciously, not by enemies, but by the people closest to you, the people who love you, but cannot quite follow you into the depth of what you are carrying. I am not going to tell you that those things do not hurt. They do. And you have been incredibly strong in not letting that hurt turn you bitter. But strength does not mean the pain is not real. It is real. It belongs to this season, and it is allowed to be here. But here is what I want you to begin to understand, because this understanding is the turning point of everything that follows. What you have been calling waiting, I want to invite you to call positioning, not as a way of minimizing what the wait has cost you, but as a way of accurately describing what has actually been happening while you stood still. A person who is waiting is passive. A person who is being positioned is in the hands of something intentional. The years that felt like delay were not years when heaven forgot you. They were years when heaven was building something that required your specific shape, your specific pain, your specific capacity, to be the exact scars to be right fit for what is about to be placed into your hands. You were not left in the waiting room. You were in the workshop, and the work that was being done there was being done on you. There is a profound difference between being overlooked and being positioned, and I want to draw that line clearly for you right now. When someone is overlooked, they are simply not seen. Their absence makes no difference. The room continues without them, and no one marks the space where they were standing. But when someone is positioned, their stillness is strategic. Their absence from certain rooms is intentional. The place where they have been kept quiet is the exact place where what is coming needs them to be standing when it arrives. The people who overlooked you did not have the authority to determine your worth. They only had the ability to reveal that your place was not among them. And in doing so, every person who passed you over, every opportunity that slipped sideways, every door that closed before you could walk through it, was in fact a set of hands gently steering you toward the one room where your name has always been written on the wall. You have not been abandoned. You have been protected from arriving too early. And right now, somewhere in the depth of what you are feeling as you receive these words, there is something beginning to shift. A small loosening, a breath that goes slightly deeper than it has in a while. That is recognition. That is the part of you that has known this all along. Finally hearing it spoken in a language clear enough to believe. If these words have named something real for you today, something you have been carrying without anyone to identify it, I want to invite you to type the word Brikik in the comments below. Not as a performance, not as a ritual, but as a declaration. A declaration that you are no longer just surviving this season. You are receiving what this season has always been trying to give you. Type it simply. Type it honestly. And as you do, know that somewhere else, another chosen one is reading those same words in the comments, and your honesty is becoming their courage. And if this message has reached you today, if it has found you in the middle of a week that has been harder than you let on to anyone around you, I want to gently ask you to consider doing something small that carries a large weight. This channel exists because of people like you, people who showed up when they needed something real, and who chose to give something back so that the message could keep traveling. If you are able to support this work with even the smallest contribution, a donation of any size, you are not giving to a channel. You are giving to the next chosen one who is sitting in their car at midnight, not knowing that a message like this one exists, not knowing that someone is about to name exactly what they have been feeling. Your generosity is the bridge between this message and the person who has not found it yet. There is a link available for you to give, and whatever you are able to offer is received with genuine gratitude. And if giving is not possible for you in this season, then please share this video instead. Share it with one person. You may not know why you are sharing it. You do not need to. Heaven does. Please also like this video and subscribe to this channel so that when the next letter arrives, it finds you first. The positioning is not over, but the understanding of it has begun. Something has already begun to move in you, and I want you to feel that before we go any further. The shift that happened in the last few moments, small loosening, the breath that went a little deeper, that was not nothing. That was something real. And the reason I want you to feel it before we continue is because what I am about to give you is not meant to be received by a person who is still braced against themselves. It is meant to be received by someone who has allowed, even slightly, even just a crack, the possibility that what is happening in their life right now is not punishment. That the stillness has a purpose, that the silence has been speaking all along in a language that takes a specific kind of quiet to hear. So before I give you the practice, I want you to do one thing. Just one. I want you to take a single breath that is longer than your last one. Not a dramatic breath. Not a performance of peace you do not yet feel. Just a breath that is slightly more deliberate than the ones you have been taking while carrying everything you have been carrying. Breathe in slowly, hold it for just a moment, and then let it go. Let it carry out with it, just for now, the need to have everything figured out. You do not need to have it figured out to receive what is coming. You only need to be present enough to receive it. Good. Now we can begin. What I am about to share with you is something I call the return protocol. It is not complicated. It does not require a specific room or a specific time of day or a level of spiritual achievement you feel you have not yet reached. It does not require you to be at your best. In fact, it works most powerfully when you come to it exactly as you are, worn, uncertain, quietly hoping, honestly tired. The return protocol has 3 steps, and each step builds on the one before it. You can do all 3 in the space of 7 minutes. And before this message is over, I am going to tell you something about those 7 minutes that will change the way you understand what is happening in your brain and in your spirit when you give yourself that small, specific window of time each day. But first, the steps. Step 1 is this. Before anything else, before any declaration or any practice or any shift in frequency, I want you to identify something you are grateful for that did not happen. Not something you received. Not a blessing you can point to on a list. Something that was taken from you, or something that never came, or something that fell apart, and that you have not yet been able to call a gift. A relationship that ended before you thought it should. An opportunity that collapsed at the last moment. A door that closed so firmly and so finally that you stopped knocking. A plan you made with everything you had that simply did not work out the way you believed it would. I want you to find one of those things. Hold it gently in your mind. And then, without forcing yourself to feel something you do not yet feel, I want you to say these words quietly, either out loud or in the interior of your own heart. Say, I do not understand this yet, but I am willing to consider that this was protection. You do not have to believe it fully. Willingness is enough. Willingness is actually more powerful than certainty in this context, because willingness keeps the door open while certainty that has not yet been earned can sometimes close it. The gratitude that comes from recognizing protection and loss is one of the deepest and most transformative forms of gratitude available to a human being. It does not arrive easily. It does not arrive quickly. But the moment you become willing to receive it, something in the atmosphere around your life begins to shift. You are not rewriting the past. You are releasing your grip on the story that the past has to be only what it looked like on the surface. Take as long as you need with step 1. There is no timer here. There is no grade. There is only you. And the thing you have been carrying, and the first gentle loosening of the hold it has had on the part of you that was made for more than grief. Step 2 is a declaration, and it is tied directly to something ancient and true about the nature of time and the nature of promise. You will understand the full depth of this declaration more completely when we reach the section of this message that speaks about sacred time. But for now, I want you to receive it as a statement of orientation, a way of placing yourself correctly in relation to where you actually are, rather than where fear tells you that you are. The declaration is this. Speak it slowly and mean each word as you say it. Say, I am not behind. I am not forgotten. I am not too late. I am exactly where the hand of God has placed me, and what has been promised over my life is still moving toward me. on a timeline that I did not design and do not need to manage. Say that again if you need to. Say it a third time if the first 2 times feel like you are speaking it at a wall. Because here is what the repetition does. It is not magic. It is not the performance of faith to impress anyone watching. It is the act of training your nervous system, the very physical structure of your brain, to begin orienting toward truth rather than toward fear. Your brain, as you will shortly understand in a new and scientific way, is remarkably responsive to the patterns it is given. When you speak truth repeatedly, even truth you do not yet fully feel, you are literally beginning to rewire the channels through which your thoughts travel. You are not pretending, you are practicing. And practice, done consistently, becomes the new default. Step 2 is complete when you have said that declaration at least twice and meant at least some part of it. Even the smallest sincere portion is enough. Heaven does not require a perfect performance. It requires an honest heart. Step 3 is the one that holds everything together, and it is the simplest of the 3, which may be why it is also the most powerful. Step 3 is 7 minutes of silence. Not silence in the sense of the absence of sound, because many of you are in environments where complete quiet is not available to you. Silence in the sense of intentional stillness. 7 minutes where you are not producing anything, not solving anything, not scrolling or planning or rehearsing or reviewing. 7 minutes where you simply allow yourself to be present in your own body, breathing at a pace that is slightly slower than your normal rhythm, with no agenda except to be open. You may use soft instrumental music in the background if complete silence feels too vast. You may sit, or lie down, or remain wherever you are as long as your body is as relaxed as the circumstances allow. And during those 7 minutes, the only instruction I want to give you is this. If a thought arises, do not fight it. Do not chase it. Simply notice it, the way you might notice a cloud passing across a sky you are watching from a comfortable place, and then let your attention return to your breath, to the slow and steady rhythm of your own body, doing the work it was designed to do. 7 minutes. That is all. That is the full extent of the practice. But I want to tell you something about those 7 minutes that you may not know. Something that connects what you have just done in the spirit to what is simultaneously happening inside the 3 pounds of extraordinary material that sits behind your eyes and governs every thought, every memory, every creative impulse, every moment of clarity you have ever experienced in your entire life. Your brain operates on frequencies. This is not a metaphor. This is measurable, documented, reproducible science that researchers have been studying for decades. Right now, as you go about your ordinary day, your brain is producing electrical waves at a particular frequency, and that frequency determines, to a significant degree, the quality of your thinking, the depth of your creativity, the resilience of your emotional state, and the ease with which new ideas and new possibilities can be received and processed. When you are in a state of stress, of anxious forward planning, low-grade fear, your brain operates at a frequency called beta, which is useful for tasks that require alertness and rapid response, but which actively suppresses the deeper functions of the mind, the ones connected to intuition, to creative breakthrough, to what some researchers have described as the experience of sudden clarity, the feeling of knowing something before you can fully explain how you know it. When you slow down, when you breathe deliberately, when you give yourself those 7 minutes of intentional stillness, your brain begins to shift into a different frequency, a slower, deeper, more expansive state. And it is in that state that something remarkable becomes available to you, something that the most gifted minds throughout human history have consistently described as the source of their greatest breakthroughs. Scientists have a name for this state, and in a few moments, I am going to introduce you to someone who has spent more than 30 years of his life studying exactly what happens in that state, what it produces, and what becomes possible when ordinary people learn to access it consistently and deliberately. But I want you to understand something first, before the science, before the research, before any of that. The 3 steps you have just been given are not preparation for the science. The science is confirmation of what you have already, in your spirit, known to be true. That stillness is not emptiness. That silence is not absence. That the 7 minutes you give to intentional quiet are not minutes lost to productivity. They are minutes invested in the part of you that operates at the deepest level, the level where your purpose lives, where your clarity lives, where the specific frequency of who you were made to be is either being suppressed by noise or being allowed to rise. The chosen ones throughout history have always known this. They withdrew to quiet places. They spent nights in prayer that looked, from the outside, like doing nothing. They fasted, not only from food, but from noise, from company, from the constant stimulation of the world around them. Not because they were escaping, but because they understood, in the language available to them, what researchers are now beginning to confirm in the language of neuroscience. That there is a state of mind available to human beings that is qualitatively different from the ordinary waking state. That in that state, the distance between a person and their purpose collapses. That in that state, what felt impossibly far away begins to feel within reach. And that this state is not reserved for monks or mystics or people with a particular spiritual pedigree. It is available to anyone who is willing to sit still for 7 minutes and allow the noise to settle long enough for the signal to come through. You are willing. You have already proven that by being here. You have already taken step 1. And 7 minutes from now, if you choose to close your eyes and breathe and simply be, you will have completed something that most people, in the noise and rush of their ordinary days, will never give themselves. You will have returned to yourself, and from that place of return, everything that is coming toward you will be easier to receive, easier to recognize, and easier to step into without flinching. The return protocol is yours now. 3 steps, 7 minutes, available to you today, tomorrow, and every day after that. And what those 7 minutes are doing in your brain, in your biology, in the very physical architecture of your capacity to think and create and connect and receive. That is what we are going to talk about next. There is a frequency that the chosen ones carry. You may have felt it without having a name for it. It is the thing that makes certain people walk into a room and shift the atmosphere without saying a word. It is the thing that makes a particular kind of person see solutions where everyone else sees only problems, feel calm in situations that would unravel most people around them, and produce ideas that seem to arrive from somewhere beyond the ordinary reach of effort and intention. It is not luck. It is not personality. It is not the result of having had an easier life or a better education or more favorable circumstances. It is a frequency, a specific, measurable, reproducible state of brain activity that researchers have studied for decades, and that ancient wisdom has been describing in spiritual language for thousands of years. And in the next few minutes, I am going to give you the name of that frequency. The name of the man who has devoted his life to understanding it, and the specific way that you can begin accessing it today with nothing more than a pair of headphones and 7 minutes of your time. The frequency is called gamma. In the language of neuroscience, Gamma brainwaves operate at the highest end of the measurable spectrum of brain activity, above beta, above alpha, above theta, at a range of approximately 40 cycles per second and beyond. Researchers who study gamma activity in the brain have found that it is consistently present in moments of peak cognitive performance. It appears during what psychologists call flow states, those rare and extraordinary moments when a person is operating at the absolute height of their ability, when time seems to slow or disappear, when the work being produced feels less like effort and more like reception, like something moving through the person rather than being generated by them. Gamma activity is present in experienced meditators, in highly creative individuals, in people who consistently demonstrate what researchers describe as exceptional insight, the ability to perceive connections and solutions that are not visible to the ordinary waking mind. And here is the part that connects the science back to what you already know in your spirit. The people in whom gamma activity is most consistently and most powerfully present are not a random sample of the population. They are people who have been through significant seasons of refinement, people who have sat in the fire long enough to be changed by it, people who have spent time in the kind of deep quiet that most of the world runs from, people who, in the language of this message, have been chosen and have endured the cost of that choosing. The gamma frequency is not incidental to the chosen one experience. It is, at least in part, the biological signature of it. Now I want to introduce you to the man who gave his life to understanding this, because his story matters to what you are about to receive. His name is Dr. James Rivers, and he is a neuroscientist whose career began at one of the most rigorous academic institutions in the world, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he spent years studying the relationship between brainwave activity and human performance. Over time, his research expanded to include work affiliated with NASA, where scientists were grappling with a specific and urgent question: what separates the human beings who perform at the highest level under conditions of extreme pressure from those who collapse under the conditions? What is happening in the brains of the people who remain creative, clear, and effective when everything around them is demanding they shut down? The answer, after more than 30 years of research and study and refinement, pointed consistently toward one thing: not intelligence in the conventional sense, not training, though training matters, not even experience, though experience contributes. The single most reliable predictor of peak human performance under pressure was the ability to access and sustain a specific quality of brainwave activity. The ability to move into and remain in a state where gamma and theta frequencies were active together, where the deep intuitive processing of the theta state combined with the high-level pattern recognition and integrative thinking of the gamma state to produce something that looked, from the outside, almost like a superpower, and that felt, from the inside, like suddenly being able to see clearly in a room where the lights had always been dim. Dr. Rivers spent those 30 years asking one further question: if this state is the key to human flourishing at the highest level, and if most people spend their entire lives never accessing it consistently, is there a way to reliably bring ordinary people into this state without requiring years of meditation training or extraordinary circumstances? And the answer he arrived at, after thousands of hours of research and testing and refinement, was yes. The brain, it turns out, is remarkably responsive to sound. Specifically, the brain has an innate tendency to synchronize its own electrical activity with rhythmic auditory signals delivered at precise frequencies. This phenomenon is called brainwave entrainment, and it has been studied and documented in peer-reviewed research for decades. When the ears receive sound signals calibrated to specific frequencies, the brain does not merely hear those signals. It begins to mirror them. It begins to produce electrical activity that matches the pattern being delivered. And if those signals are calibrated correctly, the brain can be gently, reliably, and reproducibly guided into the gamma and theta states that are associated with peak performance, deep creativity, accelerated learning, emotional resilience, and what Dr. Rivers describes as the full activation of the human mind's potential. The technology Dr. Rivers developed to deliver these signals is called the Genius Wave. It uses a precise combination of binaural beats, which are slightly different frequencies delivered to each ear simultaneously, creating a third frequency inside the brain itself, and isochronic tones, which are rhythmic pulses of sound calibrated to guide the brain through specific states in a specific sequence. The result is a 7-minute audio experience that does not require you to meditate, does not require you to have any prior experience with mindfulness or contemplative practice, does not require you to understand the science, and does not require you to do anything other than put on a pair of headphones, press play, and allow your brain to do what it was designed to do when given the right signal. 7 minutes. The same 7 minutes you were introduced to in the return protocol. This is not a coincidence. The 7-minute window is, according to Dr. Rivers' research, the optimal duration for initial brainwave entrainment, long enough for the brain to move fully into the target state, short enough that it does not produce the cognitive fatigue that can result from longer sessions. 7 minutes, done consistently, daily, is enough to begin shifting the baseline frequency at which your brain operates, which means that over time, with regular practice, the states of clarity and creativity and intuitive knowing that used to arrive only occasionally, unpredictably, like gifts you could not plan for, begin to become your new normal. Begin to become the water you swim in rather than the rare island you occasionally visit. I want to tell you about someone who experienced this. A woman who came to the Genius Wave not from a place of curiosity, but from a place of genuine exhaustion. She had been working for years in a field she believed she was called to, had poured everything she had into building something meaningful, and had watched it stall again and again. Not from lack of effort, but from what she described as an inability to think clearly under pressure. Every time a critical decision needed to be made, her mind would cloud. Every time a creative solution was needed, she would go blank. She felt, in her own words, like she was trying to operate a finely built machine with the wrong fuel. She began using the Genius Wave for 7 minutes each morning. Before anything else, before her phone, before the news, before the demands of the day had a chance to calibrate her brain towards stress and reactivity. Within 3 weeks, she noticed something she had not experienced in years. The clarity she had been chasing through every productivity system and every self-improvement practice she had tried was arriving on its own, quietly, without effort, in the ordinary moments of her day. The decisions that used to paralyze her began to resolve themselves with an ease that surprised her. The creative blocks that had cost her months began to dissolve. And perhaps most remarkably, the anxiety that had been her constant companion, the low hum of not enough that had followed her through every achievement, began to quiet. She described it simply. She said it felt like her brain had finally been given permission to work the way it was always supposed to work. Now I want to speak to something directly, because I know some of you are thinking it, and I would rather name it than leave it sitting unspoken between us. $39 is not nothing, especially not in a season where money has felt tight, where resources have felt scarce, where you have already given so much and received what feels like so little in return. That feeling is completely valid. I am not going to minimize it or talk you out of it with enthusiasm. What I am going to tell you is this: the Genius Wave is not a luxury item. It is not a self-improvement accessory for people who already have everything working. It is a tool designed specifically for the person who has been operating below their actual capacity because the noise of their circumstances has been drowning out the signal of who they actually are. And $39 for a tool that you will use every day, for 7 minutes a day, for the rest of your life if you choose to, works out to something so small per day that I will not even calculate it because the calculation would almost feel insulting to what it can actually produce in your life. The regular price of the Genius Wave is $49, but through the pinned comment below this video, you can access it today for just $39. That price comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee, 90 full days, which means you can use it every day for 3 months, experience exactly what it does in your life. And if at any point in those 90 days you feel that it has not given you something real, something measurable, something worth more than what you paid, you can request a full refund with no questions asked. The risk is not yours. The only thing you are risking by not trying, it is another day of operating at a frequency below the one you were designed to carry. One important thing: the Genius Wave is only available through the single link in the pinned comment below this video. There are imitation products being sold under similar names, and I want you to be protected from that. Only the link in the pinned comment will take you to the verified original product developed by Dr. Rivers and his team. Do not search for it elsewhere. Go directly to the pinned comment and use only that link. And finally, this offer at $39 is not permanent. It is a limited window, available to a limited number of people, and when it closes, it closes. I am not telling you this to manufacture urgency. I am telling you this because you have already waited long enough for the things that belong to you. The Genius Wave is one of those things, and it is waiting for you right now in the pinned comment at a price that will not be available forever, with a guarantee that removes every reasonable reason to hesitate. The chosen one carries a frequency. Now you know its name. Now you know how to access it. And everything else that is coming, the doors opening, the clarity arriving, the things shifting in ways you have been waiting years to see, will be met by a version of you who is finally operating at full capacity. Before we move into what is coming, I need to sit here with you for a moment. Not to rush you toward the next thing, not to quickly reframe everything into something more comfortable, but to simply be honest with you about something that most messages like this one skip past too quickly, because sitting in it is hard and moving through it feels better. And there is always the temptation to get to the hope before the grief that has been properly honored. But I have learned, and perhaps you have learned, it too in your own way, that grief that is skipped does not disappear. It goes underground. It shows up later in ways you did not plan for, in reactions that seem disproportionate to the moment, in a brittleness that surprises even you, in a weariness that rest does not seem to touch. So I am not going to skip past it. I am going to sit here with you in it first, because you deserve that, and because the hope that comes after will mean so much more when it rises from a foundation of truth, rather than from a foundation of avoidance. Let me say something plainly. The years of waiting have taken things from you, real things, not abstract things, not things that can be easily replaced or reframed away. Actual, specific, irreplaceable things that belong to you, and that the length of this season has cost you in ways that no amount of eventual breakthrough will simply erase. I want to name some of them, and I want you to let yourself feel the truth of each one rather than immediately reaching for the silver lining, because the silver lining is coming and it will be real, but it is not yet. Right now we are here in the honest accounting of what has been given and what has been taken, and that accounting matters. The first thing the waiting has taken is relationships that could have been built during the years you were in this season. There are connections that did not deepen because you were not fully available to deepen them. Not because you did not care, but because a person who is carrying the weight of an unresolved purpose, who is living with the low hum of something unfinished in the background of every interaction, is not fully present in the way that deep relationship requires. There are friendships that stayed at a surface level that might have gone further. There are romantic possibilities that did not develop because you were carrying something too heavy and too private to share with someone new. There are family relationships that did not get the attention they deserved because you were spending your interior resources on simply holding yourself together through another year of uncertainty. Those are real losses. They happened. You felt them. And I am not going to tell you that every one of those relationships will be restored, because that would not be honest. What I will say later is what is coming instead. But for now, I want you to feel the weight of what was lost, and I want you to know that the grief of it is legitimate. The second thing the waiting has taken is the trajectory of your career or your calling, whatever form that takes in your life. There is a version of your professional path that could have gone further by now if the season had been shorter. There are skills you could have been using, platforms you could have been building, contributions you could have been making that have been delayed by a waiting period that you did not choose and could not control. You have watched people around you advance. You have watched opportunities be given to others who seemed less prepared, less sincere, less genuinely committed to something meaningful. And you have done your best not to let that watching become bitterness, but you have not always succeeded. And even when you succeeded, you paid for it. Because holding back the natural human response to being passed over takes energy. And energy spent holding back is energy not spent moving forward. That too is a real cost. A cost that deserves to be named honestly rather than spiritualized too quickly. The third thing the waiting has taken is something more private, more personal, more difficult to admit even to yourself. It has taken the freedom to tell your biggest dreams out loud, without the weight of how long you have already been waiting, pressing down on those words. There was a time when you could speak about what you believed was coming with a lightness and an ease that felt natural. But the longer the weight has stretched, the heavier the words have become, until there are some things you no longer say out loud at all, not because you have stopped believing them entirely, but because the combination of your own uncertainty and the invisible but palpable skepticism of the people around you has made speaking them feel like an act of exposure you are not sure you can afford. You have become quieter about your dreams, not because they have shrunk, but because you have been quietly protecting them from an environment that has not always been safe for them. That quietness has cost you something. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes from carrying your biggest, most sacred beliefs in silence because the world around you has not given you a place to speak them freely. And the fourth thing, perhaps the most personal of all, is faith in yourself. Not faith in God, because something in you has kept that thread alive even when it was the thinnest it has ever been. But faith in yourself. Faith that you are reading the signals correctly. Faith that what you have been sensing is real and not imagined. Faith that you are the right person for the thing you believe you were made for, and not someone who has simply convinced themselves of something that was never true. The waiting has taken chips out of that faith quietly, one at a time, the way water eventually shapes stone, not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, cumulatively, in a way that has left you less certain of yourself than you were when this season began. And that loss of interior certainty is one of the most painful things a person can experience, because it is the kind of pain that is invisible from the outside. That makes you appear fine while something essential is quietly eroding beneath the surface. I am not going to rush past those things. I am going to let them be named and let the naming do what it needs to do. Now I want to tell you about a man named Joseph. Not the full story, not the ending that everyone knows. Just the part that most people hurry past because the ending is so good that the middle feels like merely a corridor to walk through quickly on the way to the throne room. But the middle was not a corridor. The middle was a life, and Joseph lived every moment of it. Joseph was a young man who had been given a dream, not a small dream. A dream of such significance and such scope that when he spoke it out loud, even to his own family, the people who were supposed to love him most responded with a hostility so intense that it changed the entire course of his existence. His brothers, the people he had grown up with, the people he had eaten with and worked alongside and trusted in the way that only family can be trusted, threw him into a pit and then sold him. Sold him like he was not a person, like the dream inside him had no value, like the thing God had placed in him was worth nothing and he was worth less. He was taken to Egypt as a slave, and he served faithfully because that is the kind of person he was, and he rose to a position of trust and responsibility. And then he was falsely accused by a woman who lied about what had happened between them, and he was thrown into prison. Into a prison after already having been thrown into a pit, after already having been sold by his own family, after already having served faithfully in circumstances he had not chosen. He sat in that prison for years, not days, not weeks, years. He interpreted dreams for fellow prisoners whom promised to remember him and speak well of him to Pharaoh, and then forgot him the moment he was released. Joseph sat in the prison and waited. And the waiting was not cinematic. It was not noble in the way it looks from the outside when you know the ending. It was a man in a cell with a dream that had been given to him by God, and that looked, from every available angle, like it was never going to come true. He did not know about the throne room. He only knew the prison and the pit before it, and the betrayal before that. I am not telling you the rest of the story yet, because this part of the message is not about the ending. This part of the message is about honoring what it cost. Joseph lost years. He lost his family. He lost his freedom. He lost his reputation. He lost the version of his life that he might have lived if the dream had simply arrived the way he expected it to when he first received it as a young man full of certainty and hope. Those losses were real. The grief of them was real. The confusion of them was real. The nights in the prison when the dream must have felt like a cruelty rather than a promise, those nights were real. And yet, I am not going to say the yet, because the yet is coming, and when it comes it will be everything. But right now, in this moment, I want to sit with you in the part of the story that most people rush past, the part where the cost is being paid, and the ending is not yet visible. And I want to say to you what I believe Joseph needed someone to say to him in the middle of the prison years, before the ending, when there was nothing but the waiting and the loss and the dream that refused to die, even when every circumstance said it should. Your pain is real. What this season has taken from you is real, and you do not have to pretend otherwise to qualify for what is coming. You do not have to perform a peace you have not yet arrived at. You do not have to minimize the cost in order to be worthy of the eventual gift. The God who placed the dream inside you has always known exactly what the journey would cost, and the cost was always part of the plan. Not because suffering is the goal, but because the person who will be standing in the place of promise when it finally arrives needed to be built by the very specific weight of the journey that led there. You are that person. You are being built by what you have carried, and what has been taken is not gone. It is being transformed into something that will make what is coming richer, deeper, and more meaningful than it could ever have been if it had arrived before the cost was paid. The prison is not the end of Joseph's story, and it is not the end of yours. There is something that has been missing from every conversation you have had about your waiting season, and it is not encouragement, because you have received encouragement. It is not instruction, because people have given you steps to follow. It is not even prayer, because you have prayed, and others have prayed with you, and the prayers have been genuine and sincere, and offered with real faith. What has been missing is language, a specific, ancient, precise kind of language that names what is actually happening in your life with an accuracy that the ordinary vocabulary of patience and trust and hanging in there simply cannot reach. Because here is what happens when you do not have the right language for your experience. You default to the wrong language. And the wrong language shapes the wrong story. And the wrong story produces the wrong understanding of where you are, which produces the wrong emotional response to your circumstances, which produces a kind of suffering that is not only the suffering of the situation itself, but the additional suffering of believing that the situation means something it does not actually mean. You have been living inside the wrong story about your waiting. Not because you are faithless, not because you are spiritually underdeveloped, but because no one has given you the words that would let you see it correctly. And today, that changes. I want to give you a word. It is an ancient Hebrew word, and it appears in one of the most quoted verses in all of Scripture. A verse that you have almost certainly heard before, possibly many times, and yet whose deepest meaning has likely never been fully opened for you. The verse is from the 40th chapter of Isaiah, and it contains a promise about those who wait upon the Lord, that they shall renew their strength, that they shall mount up with wings like eagles, that they shall run and not grow weary, that they shall walk and not faint. You know those words. You may have held on to them in the hardest moments of this season. But the word I want to give you today is the word that sits at the center of that promise, the word that is translated in English as wait, but that in its original Hebrew carries a meaning so much richer and so much more active and so much more powerful than the English word wait can possibly contain. The word is kava, and it does not mean what you think it means. In English, the word wait is passive. It describes a state of suspension, of holding still, of doing nothing while something else happens or does not happen. When we say we are waiting, we mean we are not yet moving. We mean we are in a state of anticipation that has no activity attached to it. And this is the story most people tell themselves about their season of waiting, that they are suspended, that they are in a holding pattern, that life has pressed pause on them while the rest of the world continues to play. And if that is the story you have been telling yourself, then, of course, the waiting feels like punishment. Of course, it feels like being forgotten. Of course, it produces the particular anguish of someone who is standing still while everyone else appears to be moving forward. But kava does not mean any of that. The word kava in its original Hebrew context, is a word borrowed from the act of making rope. Specifically, it describes the process of twisting multiple strands together to create something far stronger than any individual strand could be on its own. When an ancient rope maker practiced kava, they were not passive. They were engaged in one of the most intentional and skilled acts of their craft. They were taking individual strands, each one fragile and breakable on its own, and they were braiding them together with precision and patience, strand over strand, until the resulting rope could bear a weight that would have snapped any single strand instantly. The strength of the finished rope was not despite the process of twisting. It was because of it. The tension, the turning, the pressure applied at each point of the braid, these were not obstacles to the rope's usefulness. They were the very mechanism by which its usefulness was created. Now, hear this, and let it land in the place where the wrong story has been living. Every year of your waiting season has been a strand. Every difficulty you have navigated, every disappointment you did not let destroy you, every morning you got up and chose to keep going. When every part of you wanted to stop, every prayer you prayed in the dark when you were not sure anyone was listening, every time you held your tongue when bitterness would have been the easier choice, every relationship you handled with grace when you were running on empty, every dream you protected when the world around you gave you every reason to release it. Every single one of those things has been a strand. And kava, the real waiting, the waiting that Isaiah was describing, has been the process by which those strands have been twisted together, under pressure, with precision, into something that can now bear a weight and carry a load and fulfill a purpose that no individual year, no individual experience, no individual version of you could have managed alone. You are not delayed. You are being assembled. Ride that again in the privacy of your own heart, because it is one of the most important sentences this message contains. You are not a person who got behind. You are not a person whose timeline slipped. You are not a person who missed their moment or wasted their years or arrived at this point in their life with nothing to show for the journey. You are a rope being made, and the tension you have been feeling, the pressure that has sometimes felt unbearable, the twisting that has disoriented you and made you unsure which way is up, that is not evidence that something is wrong with your life. That is the sound of kava. That is the evidence of a process that is producing something extraordinary, something that will hold when the weight comes, something that will not snap when the load is placed on it, something that was made, specifically and intentionally, to carry exactly what is being prepared to be entrusted to it. This is what Isaiah was saying. Not wait passively, not sit still and do nothing, but braid, actively, persistently, with every strand that the season places in your hands. Braid, and trust that the one doing the braiding knows exactly what is being made and exactly how strong it needs to be. Now I want to bring you to a second piece of ancient language, because kava tells you what the waiting has been doing. But what I want to give you next tells you something about where you are right now, in this specific moment, at this specific point in your journey. And for this, I want to use a phrase that appears not in academic theology, but in the deep symbolic language of Scripture and of human experience across every culture and every century of recorded history. The phrase is the midnight hour. In the ancient world, midnight was not simply a time on a clock. It was a threshold. It was the precise point of maximum darkness, the moment when the night was at its deepest and its longest and its most disorienting, when the distance to dawn felt the greatest and the possibility of morning felt the most abstract. But midnight was also understood to be something else. It was understood to be the turning point, the moment when the direction of time itself shifted. Because after midnight, the darkness does not deepen. After midnight, without any visible sign, without any announcement, without any gradual brightening that you can detect, in the moment it begins, the night has already begun its movement toward morning. The darkness after midnight is the same darkness as the darkness before midnight, but the direction has changed, and what feels like the deepest point of the night is, in truth, the first moment of the approach of dawn. Think about the story of Paul and Silas in the prison at Philippi. They had been beaten. They had been placed in the innermost part of the prison, which means the darkest, the most secure, the place furthest from any exit. Their feet were fastened in stocks, and it was midnight. The text is specific about that. It was midnight when they began to sing. Not because the circumstances had improved, not because a door had opened or a guard had softened or any visible sign of change had appeared. It was midnight, the darkest moment, and they chose to worship. And it was at midnight, in response to worship offered in the darkest moment, that the earthquake came, that the foundations shook, that every door was opened, that every chain was loosed. Beloved, I want to ask you something, and I want you to receive it not as a challenge, but as a genuine question offered in love. What hour is it in your life right now? Because if you are honest, if you look at the interior landscape of where you are, at the exhaustion and the uncertainty and the sense that the darkness has been going on for longer than you can easily explain to anyone who has not been inside it with you, I think you know the answer. It is midnight, or very close to it. And I know that the midnight hour feels like the evidence that morning is never coming. I know that the depth of the darkness in this moment feels like proof that you have been forgotten, or that the promise was not real, or that something has gone permanently wrong. I know that feeling, and I want to speak directly into it with everything that the ancient wisdom of the midnight hour has to say. The midnight hour is not where promises go to die. It is where they go to be born. At midnight, when everyone thought it was all over, when the prison was sealed and the chains were on and the darkness was complete, heaven began to move, not in spite of the darkness, not after the darkness lifted, in the middle of it, at the deepest point of it, in the moment that looked, from every external measurement, like the moment least likely to produce anything miraculous. You are in the midnight hour. And that means you are not at the end of something. You are at the threshold of something. Direction has already changed, even though the darkness around you looks the same as it did an hour ago. The morning is already moving toward you, even though you cannot yet see the first suggestion of light on the horizon. The earthquake is already forming beneath the foundations of everything that has been holding you in place, even though the ground beneath your feet feels as solid and as immovable as it ever has. The kava is complete. The strands have been braided into something strong enough to carry what is coming. And now you are standing at the midnight hour, which means you are standing exactly one moment before everything changes. What has been assembled in you, the waiting, is about to meet what has been prepared for you during the same period. The rope is ready. The door is ready. And midnight, which felt like the proof that morning would never come, is about to reveal itself as the precise and appointed threshold of your dawn. You are not at the end of your story. You are at the turning point of it. And the turning point, in the economy of heaven, is always the midnight hour, always the place of maximum darkness, always the moment that looks, from the outside, most like defeat and most like finality. But that is, in truth, the last moment of the night before the irreversible movement toward morning begins. The darkness has not won. it has simply reached its peak. And from a peak, there is only one direction left to go. You can feel it, can you not? Something underneath the surface of your ordinary days, something that does not quite have a name yet, but that has been making itself known in small ways. In the way certain mornings feel different from the mornings that came before them. In the way a particular stillness has begun to settle into the parts of you that have been restless for so long, that restlessness had started to feel a permanent state. It is not hope exactly, though hope is part of it, is not excitement, though there is something in the neighborhood of excitement moving through the deeper layers of what you are carrying. It is more like the feeling of a tide turning, the feeling of a weight that has been pressing in one direction for a very long time, beginning, slowly, almost imperceptibly, to ease. Something is coming, and the part of you that was made to recognize the movement of heaven is already beginning to feel it, even before your mind has caught up with what your spirit already knows. I want to be specific with you about what that something is, because chosen ones in this particular season are sometimes given a general sense that change is on the way without being given the specific areas where that change is about to manifest. And the problem with a general sense of coming change without specificity is that it can remain floating and abstract, something you feel but cannot orient yourself toward, something that inspires a vague anticipation without giving you anything concrete to stand on. So I am going to be concrete. I am going to describe, in 3 specific areas of your life, exactly what is beginning to move, what it will look like when it arrives, and what the experience of it will feel like from the inside when you are standing in the middle of it. But before I do that, I want to describe what you are feeling right now, in this moment, as you receive these words. Because naming the interior experience is as important as naming the exterior change that is coming. And because the emotional landscape of this particular threshold is specific and deserves to be accurately described. What you are feeling right now is a combination of things that do not usually sit together comfortably. There is a tiredness that has not yet left, because the midnight hour does not lift all at once. The exhaustion of the waiting season does not evaporate the moment the direction changes. It lingers for a little while, the way the cold of a long night lingers in the air even after the sun has risen, even after the light is fully present and the darkness is clearly over. You are still carrying the weight of what the season cost you, which we honored together in the earlier part of this message. And that weight does not disappear simply because the turning point has arrived. It begins to transform. It begins to shift from something that presses down on you to something that grounds you, from a burden into a ballast, from a heaviness that slows you down into a depth that will give everything you do from this point forward, a quality of substance and authenticity that people who have not paid the same price simply cannot manufacture. Alongside the tiredness, there is something else, a quickening, a sense of attention, as though some interior part of you has leaned forward slightly, is listening more carefully than usual, is tracking something at the edge of perception that it has not been able to clearly see yet, but that it knows is there. That quickening is real. It is not wishful thinking. It is the part of you that was made to recognize the movement of the divine, doing exactly what it was made to do. Trust it. Do not talk yourself out of it with the part of your mind that has been trained by disappointment to be skeptical of hope. The skepticism served you in one season. It kept you from being destroyed by the gap between expectation and reality. But that season is ending, and the skepticism that protected you then, if you allow it to govern your response to what is beginning to arrive. And there is a third thing you are feeling. quieter than the other two, but perhaps the most significant of them. A sense of readiness, not the loud, confident readiness of someone who has everything figured out and feels fully prepared for whatever comes next, but the quiet, settled readiness of someone who has been through enough to know that they can handle what is coming, even without knowing exactly what it is, even without having a detailed plan, even without the certainty that everything will go smoothly and nothing will be difficult. You have survived everything that has come before this moment. Every storm, every disappointment, every midnight season, every pit, every prison. You are still here, and something in you knows, in a place below the level of logical argument, that you did not survive all of that simply to arrive at more of the same. Something in you knows that the survival itself was the preparation, and that what you survived you for is finally close enough to feel. Now let me tell you about the 3 areas. The first area is relationships, and I want to be honest with you about what the movement in this area is going to look like before I tell you what it is going to feel like, because the appearance of it may initially feel like loss rather than gain, and I do not want that appearance to deceive you into resisting something that is actually working in your favor. What is about to happen in the relational landscape of your life is a clearing. Some of the people who have been present in your world, not necessarily people who are bad or who have bad intentions towards you, but people whose season in your life has reached its natural completion, are going to begin to step back. Some will do it obviously, through a conflict or a distance that develops and does not resolve itself the way previous conflicts have resolved. Will do it quietly, through a gradual fading, a reduced frequency of contact, a sense of the connection naturally loosening without dramatic cause. And when this happens, your first instinct may be to grieve it, or to try to hold on, or to question whether you have done something wrong that has caused the distance. I want you to hear this clearly. You have not done anything wrong. The clearing is not a punishment. It is a preparation. Because into the space that is being created by the departure of those who belonged to an earlier season, people are coming, specific people. People who carry a frequency that matches the frequency you have been developing through the years of waiting and refining and being assembled. People who will recognize you without needing you to explain yourself. People who will add to what you are building rather than drain the resources you need to build it. People who were not in your world before, because the version of you that is emerging from this season is the version that those people are meant to walk alongside. The right people are coming, and they are coming because the space for them is being prepared right now, in the clearing that may currently feel like loss. The second area is purpose. And this one I want to describe very carefully, because the movement in this area is subtle enough that it is easy to miss if you are not paying the right kind of attention. For a long time, perhaps for most of the waiting season, the question of what you are supposed to do with your life, what your specific calling looks like in practical terms, what the next step is and the step after that, has felt either completely unclear or frustratingly abstract. You have known in the deepest part of yourself that you were made for something specific, but the specificity has often refused to come into focus in a way that would allow you to simply move toward it with clarity and confidence. That is changing. And the way it is changing is not through a sudden dramatic revelation that arrives all at once and explains everything in a single moment of blinding clarity. It is changing through what I can only describe as a quiet answering. The questions that have been circling without landing are beginning to land. Not all of them at once, not in a way that feels like a grand unveiling, but in the way that a landscape gradually becomes visible as the morning light increases, detail by detail, with growing certainty and growing ease. You are going to find, in the coming days and weeks, that a question you have been asking for a long time suddenly has a clear answer. Not because something external happened to provide it, but because something internal has finally aligned enough to receive it. The clarity you have been seeking has not been absent. It has been forming, and it is ready now to begin arriving in the small, specific, actionable steps that you can actually take, one after another, toward the life you were made to live. The third area is resources and opportunities, and this is the one that will perhaps surprise you the most in how it arrives, because it will not look the way you have been expecting it to look. For most of the waiting season, the experience of resources and opportunities has been one of striving, of reaching and not quite grasping, of working hard toward things that somehow always remained slightly out of reach, requiring more effort than they seemed to require for other people, costing more than the apparent value of what was gained. That pattern is ending. What is coming in this area does not look like striving. It does not look like the desperate pursuit of things that keep moving away from you as you approach them. It looks like alignment. It looks like things arriving because you are finally standing in the place where they were always meant to find you. Opportunities that you did not manufacture, that you could not have engineered through effort alone, that seemed to come from directions you were not watching. Resources that appear through connections you did not chase, through doors that open without you having to force them, through a quality of ease that will feel unfamiliar at first, because ease has not been the dominant texture of this season. You are going to have to learn, in this new season, to receive without immediately bracing for the catch, to accept without immediately looking for the hidden cost, to trust that what is arriving because it belongs to you, not because it is a mistake that will shortly be corrected. Now I want to tell you what not to do during this period, because there are specific mistakes that people make at exactly this turning point, and that can delay the full arrival of what is being released into their lives. Do not announce everything before it has fully arrived. There is a particular temptation, when you begin to feel the shift, to immediately tell everyone around you that things are changing, to share the sense of anticipation before it has manifested in ways that others can see and confirm. Resist that temptation, not because sharing is wrong, but because what is emerging in you right now is tender and new and requires a protected interior space to fully develop before it is exposed to the reactions and opinions and skepticism of people who have not been inside this journey with you. Do not return to old patterns out of nervousness. When the new begins to arrive, the old will sometimes present itself as a familiar and therefore comfortable alternative. An old way of thinking, an old relationship dynamic, an old strategy that did not work before but that feels safe because it is known. Do not go back. The old patterns belong to the person you were before the waiting season assembled you into who you are now. They will not fit the new season, and forcing them to fit will only slow the arrival of what is genuinely yours. And do not minimize what you feel. The quickening you are experiencing, the quiet readiness, the sense of something approaching, these are not symptoms of wishful thinking. They are the interior evidence of an exterior reality that is moving toward you, even as you read these words. If you feel it, if somewhere in the reading of this part of the message, something has stirred in you that feels like recognition, I want to invite you to type the word "ready" in the comments below. One word, honest and simple. A declaration not to me but to yourself and to heaven that you are no longer only enduring this season, You are stepping into what this season has been preparing you for. Type ready and mean it. And as you do, know that the meaning of it is already being received by the one who placed the dream inside you before you were born. Something is coming. In your relationships, in your purpose, in your resources. It is already moving, and you, assembled by the waiting, sharpened by the midnight hour, braided by kava, into something strong enough to carry what is coming. You are ready to receive it. Something has just happened in you, and I want to acknowledge it before we move into what comes next. The declaration you just made, whether you typed it in the comments or simply felt it rise in your chest as you read the words, that declaration was not small. It was not a performance. It was the sound of a person stepping across a line that they have been standing at the edge of for a very long time. The line between enduring and receiving. The line between surviving the season and beginning to inhabit the identity that the season was always building toward. And now that you are on the other side of that line, I want to give you something specific to carry with you. Not a strategy, not another instruction. Something more personal than that. I want to give you a name. Not the name the world gave you. Not the name that was shaped by your failures or your family's expectations, or the labels that other people placed on you when they did not understand what they were looking at. I want to give you the name that belongs to the person who has just emerged from one of the most refining seasons a human being can be asked to walk through. The person who kept the faith when the faith had very little visible evidence to stand on. Who held the dream when every circumstance suggested the dream was finished. The person who prayed at midnight and kept going through the morning even when the morning did not look like what they had been promised. That person has a name, and the name is this. You are a cycle breaker. I want to explain what that means, because these two words carry more weight than they might initially appear to carry, and because understanding the full meaning of what you have been called in this moment will change the way you see not only your past, but everything that is coming. A cycle breaker is a person who absorbs into their own body and their own story the full weight of a pattern that has been running through their family, their community, their generation, or their own personal history, and who, through the specific combination of suffering and faith and refusal to give up, becomes the point at which that pattern ends. Not the person who avoids the pattern. Not the person who escapes it by circumstance or by luck or by being born into better conditions, but the person who walks directly into the weight of it, who feels every ounce of what it costs, who is shaped and sometimes nearly broken by the encounter with it, and who emerges on the other side carrying something that those who came before them were not able to carry. Not because they are stronger in some innate and effortless way, but because the specific journey they have walked has built into them a strength that is particular to their assignment. You are not the first person in your line to feel the weight of waiting. You may not be the first to carry a dream that seemed too large for the circumstances surrounding it. You may not be the first to sit in the midnight hour wondering if the promise was real. But you are the one in whom the pattern stops. You are the one whose endurance, whose faith under pressure, whose refusal to let the waiting turn you into a person defined by bitterness or resignation, becomes the inheritance that those who come after you will receive. The children who watch you. The people whose lives will be touched by what you carry into your next season. The ones who will one day tell the story of your life as the turning point in a narrative that was moving in a different direction until you arrived and, simply by refusing to stop, changed its course forever. That is what a cycle breaker does. Not with drama, not with announcement, but with the quiet, consistent, sometimes agonizing faithfulness of a Perseus who understood, even when they could not have articulated it, that what they were doing mattered beyond the boundaries of their own individual life. You are a cycle breaker, and I want you to receive that name not as a title to be proud of, but as a truth to be grounded in, because grounding is what this moment requires. The shift that is happening in your life right now, the turning of the tide, the approach of what has been prepared for you, all of it requires you to be standing on a foundation that is specific and solid and true. And the truth of who you are, named clearly and received honestly, is the most solid foundation available to you. Now I want to lead you through something, a visualization, a guided moment of seeing that I believe will do something in you that words alone, however true and however carefully chosen, cannot fully accomplish. I want you to be present for this. If you are able to close your eyes at any point during what follows, I invite you to do so. If your circumstances do not allow that, simply allow your attention to move inward, away from the screen, away from the room around you, and into the interior landscape of your own experience. I want you to picture yourself standing at a threshold. Not a metaphorical threshold in the abstract, a specific one, a doorway. You are standing in it, neither fully inside nor fully outside, but exactly at the point where one space ends and another begins. The doorway is wide enough for you. It was made for your specific dimensions, the width of your shoulders shaped by everything you have carried, the height of your head carried by the dignity of someone who has walked a long road and arrived at this specific point, still standing. Behind you is everything that the waiting season contained. I want you to turn, slowly, and look back at it, not with the eyes of regret or of grief, though grief is allowed to be present in your gaze, but with the eyes of someone who is seeing clearly, perhaps for the first time, the full landscape of what they have walked through. See the years. See the specific moments that cost the most. See the nights that were the longest and the mornings that arrived without the answers you had prayed for. See the relationships that came and went. See the version of yourself that began this journey younger and perhaps more certain and perhaps less deep than the person standing in this doorway right now. See all of it, not to be swallowed by it, but to acknowledge it, to honor it, to say silently or out loud, I walked through that, every part of it, and I am still here. Now turn back. Turn to face what is in front of you. The space ahead of you is not fully visible yet. This is important. It is not a failure of the visualization that you cannot see every detail of what lies ahead. It is an accurate representation of where you actually are. The next season is real. It is formed. It is waiting for you to step into it. But it reveals itself as you move into it, not before. And that is not a flaw in the design. That is the design. Because a person who could see every detail of what was coming before they arrived, there would not need faith. And faith, the specific kind of faith that has been built in you through the midnight hours and the kava seasons and the cost that we honored together, that faith is not something you graduate out of when the next season begins. It is something you bring into it. It is the currency of the new season, and it was minted in the fires of the old one. But there is something you can see ahead of you, not the full landscape, but the quality of the light. And the light ahead of you is different from the light behind you. It is warmer. It is more open. It carries in it a quality of spaciousness that the season behind you, for all its value and all its formation, did not always have. There is room ahead of you, room to breathe more fully, room to be more completely who you are, without the constant pressure of the waiting pressing down on every expression of yourself. Room for the things that are coming, the relationships, the clarity of purpose, the resources and opportunities to arrive and to be received and to be used for what they were prepared for. And now I want you to notice something. Look down at the threshold itself, the exact point where you are standing. Look at the line between what was and what is coming. And notice that you are already standing on it. You did not have to travel to get here. You did not have to earn your way to this exact point through some final performance of spiritual achievement. The journey itself, every step of it, every midnight hour, and every braided strand of kava, every prayer and every morning you chose to keep going, brought you to exactly this threshold. You are already here. You are already standing at the door of your next season, and the only movement required of you now is not a leap, not a dramatic crossing, just a single, deliberate, unhurried step forward. One step into the space where the light is warmer and the room is larger, and what has been prepared for you is finally within reach. Before you take that step, I want to speak something over you. Not a formula, not a religious performance, just honest words, offered from a place of genuine care for the specific, particular, irreplaceable person that you are. May the weariness that has lived in your bones begin to lift, not all at once, but steadily, day by day, as the new season makes its nature known to you. May the dreams that you have been quietly protecting in the most private rooms of your heart find, at last, the air and the light and the soil they need to grow into everything they were always meant to become. May the people who are coming toward you recognize you clearly and stay faithfully. May the clarity you have been seeking arrive in the small, specific, actionable steps that you can trust and follow without fear. May every resource that belongs to your next season find its way to you through channels you did not have to force open. And may you, cycle breaker, person of deep and tested faith, one who was assembled by the waiting and sharpened by the midnight hour, and is now standing at the threshold of everything that was always yours. May you step forward into it with the quiet confidence of someone who finally knows, in a place below argument and above doubt, that they are exactly where they were always meant to be. You are at the threshold. You are already there. And what is on the other side of one deliberate step forward has been waiting for you with a patience that mirrors your own. Take the step. You have just done something significant. The step you took at the threshold, whether it was a physical movement or an interior one, whether it happened in the visualization or in the quiet shift of something settling into place inside you, that step was real. And now that you are on the other side of it, now that the threshold is behind you rather than in front of you, I want to talk to you about what comes next in the most practical terms available to me. Because there is a particular kind of disservice that happens in messages like this one, when the spiritual and the emotional are addressed with care and depth, and the practical is left floating in generalities. You deserve more than generalities. You deserve the specific. You deserve to know not only that things are changing, but what those changes will look like in the ordinary, daily, lived texture of your actual life. And you deserve to know what you can do right now, today, in the next 24 hours, to position yourself to receive what is already moving toward you. So let me begin with the practical actions. The things that can be done, not eventually, not when the circumstances improve, or the clarity arrives, or the confidence returns, but right now, in the life you are actually living, with the resources you actually have, in the conditions that actually surround you today. The first practical action is this. Before this day ends, I want you to write down one sentence, just one. Not a list of goals, not a vision board, not a detailed plan for the next 5 years. One sentence that completes the following statement. The thing I am no longer willing to carry into my next season is this, and then you finish it. Honestly, without editing yourself towards something that sounds more spiritual or more impressive or more acceptable to anyone who might read it. The thing that has been weighing you down most specifically, the belief that is no longer true, the pattern that belongs to the old season, the story that you have been telling yourself that the waiting season tried to confirm, but that the thresholds just crossed now contradicts. Write it down. Write it in the plainest language you have. And then, in whatever way feels most natural and most honest to you, release it. Fold the paper and put it away. Speak it out loud and declare it finished. Burn it if the symbolic act of that feels right to you. But do something that marks the moment. Because moments that are marked are moments that are remembered. And this is a moment that deserves to be remembered. The second practical action is equally simple and equally important. Reach out today to one person. Not to share everything that this message has stirred in you, because not everything that is sacred needs to be immediately shared, and not everything that is new needs to be immediately exposed to the atmosphere of another person's responses, however well-intentioned. But reach out to one person who has been on your heart, someone you have been meaning to contact and have not, someone whose face or name or memory has been arriving in your thoughts with a quiet persistence that you have been too busy or too uncertain to act on. Send them a message, a simple one, not a long explanation of why you are reaching out, or a deep discussion of everything that has been happening in your interior life. Just a simple, honest, human reaching out, because the new relational season that is coming toward you does not begin with dramatic arrivals and perfect introductions. It begins with small, faithful acts of connection. It begins with you honoring the nudges that have been arriving and acting on them, rather than filing them away for a later that never quite comes. One message. Today, that is all. The third practical action is to return to the return protocol that was given to you earlier in this message. Specifically, the 7 minutes. Because what I want you to understand, now that you are on the other side of the threshold, is that the 7 minutes are not preparation for your next season. They are the daily practice of your next season, the version of you that is walking into what has been prepared, is a version that operates at a different frequency than the version that's spent years grinding through the waiting, and maintaining that frequency, keeping yourself calibrated to the state of clarity and creativity and receptivity that belongs to this new season, requires a daily practice. 7 minutes. Every morning, if possible, before the noise of the day has a chance to calibrate your brain toward reactivity and stress. 7 minutes of the return protocol, which you now know, includes the gratitude for what did not happen, the declaration of your positioning, and the intentional stillness that allows your brain to settle into the frequency where everything coming can most easily be received and recognized and acted upon. If you have not yet accessed the Genius Wave, the 7-minute audio tool developed by Dr. James Rivers that was introduced earlier in this message, I want to gently remind you that it is available through the link in the pinned comment below, and I want to say something about it in the context of where you are right now, standing on the other side of the threshold, because the context matters. The Genius Wave is not a tool for people who are still waiting for their season to begin. It is a tool for people who are ready to operate at the full capacity of who they have been assembled to be. It is a tool for the cycle breaker who has come through the midnight hour and is now stepping into a season that requires every dimension of their cognitive and creative and intuitive capacity to be fully available. The brainwave states that the Genius Wave cultivates the theta and gamma frequencies that Dr. Rivers spent more than 30 years studying and learning to reliably activate. These are the states in which the opportunities of the new season are most clearly recognized, in which the clarity of purpose arrives most readily, in which the right connections are made and the right decisions are reached with an ease that the stress-dominated beta state simply cannot produce. 7 minutes a day. Through the link in the pinned comment. At $39 with a 90-day money-back guarantee that removes every reasonable barrier to beginning. This is the right moment. You are in the right season, and the tool is waiting for you. Now let me be specific about the 3 areas of transformation, because I introduced them in the previous section, and I want to go deeper into each one, to give you the texture and the detail of what the change in each area will actually feel and look like as it unfolds. The first area is relationships, and I want to tell you something about the new people who are coming that will help you recognize them when they arrive. They will not announce themselves. They will not arrive with signs or with obvious indications that they are significant. They will arrive quietly in ordinary moments, through circumstances that seem almost accidental, through introductions that seem casual, through encounters that do not immediately announce their importance. This is why this interior calibration of your daily practice matters so much in this season, because the people who are coming for your new season will be recognizable, novel, not through dramatic first impressions, but through a quality of resonance, a sense of recognition that is felt, rather than analyzed, a feeling of being seen and understood without having to explain yourself, that will be subtle enough in the first moments to be easily dismissed if you are not paying the right kind of attention. Pay attention. When you meet someone new in this season and feel that quiet resonance, do not talk yourself out of it. Do not immediately apply the protective skepticism that the old season trained you to apply to everything that felt good. Allow yourself to be present in the encounter. Allow the connection to develop at the pace it naturally wants to develop. Do not rush it and do not resist it. Simply be present and allow what is genuine to reveal itself over time. The right people will reveal themselves as right, not through a single interaction, but through a consistent quality of showing up that will become unmistakable the more you experience it. And be prepared for the relationships that are departing to depart with grace. When you feel a connection loosening in this season, resist the impulse to hold on out of fear of the space that will be left. The space is not a problem. The space is a gift. It is the exact room that the new relationships need in order to be properly received. The second area is purpose, and I want to describe for you what the arrival of clarity in this area actually feels like, because it is different from what most people expect, and the difference matters. Most people expect clarity of purpose to arrive as a complete picture, a sudden, comprehensive understanding of exactly what they are supposed to do, in what order, through what means, toward what specific outcome. That kind of clarity is rare, and waiting for it in that form has kept many chosen ones standing at the edge of their purpose rather than stepping into it, because the complete picture never came, and so they concluded that the clarity was not yet available. But the clarity that is coming to you in this season is not a complete picture. It is a next step. One specific, clear, actionable next step that will become visible to you in the next few days or weeks, with a precision that will feel almost startling given how long the fog has been present. And the instruction is simple. When that step becomes clear, take it. Do not wait for the step after it to become equally clear before you move. Do not wait for the complete picture. Take the step that is clear. and trust that the next step will become visible from the vantage point that the first step provides. Purpose in the new season reveals itself progressively, one step at a time, to the person who is willing to move on the clarity they have, rather than waiting for a clarity that will never arrive in the form they have been expecting. The question of what you should do with your life is not going to answer itself in a single revelation. It is going to answer itself in a series of small, clear, faithful movements, each one building on the last, each one revealing more of the landscape that was invisible from where you were standing before you took the previous step. This is not a lesser form of clarity. It is the form of clarity that produces the deepest and most genuine expression of purpose, because it requires you to stay present and attentive and responsive rather than simply executing a plan that was handed to you fully formed. The third area is resources and opportunities, and I want to say something that may challenge a pattern of thinking that the waiting season has reinforced in you. The waiting season, with its consistent experience of reaching and not quite grasping, of working hard toward things that remain slightly out of reach, has likely trained you to believe, at some level below conscious thought, that resources and opportunities are things that must be pursued aggressively and secured through sustained effort, or they will simply not arrive. That belief was a reasonable response to the experience of the old season. But it belongs to the old season, and carrying it into the new one will cause you to work against the very flow that is now trying to work in your favor. In the new season, the instruction is not to stop working. It is to stop straining. There is a profound difference between working from a place of alignment and straining from a place of lack, and you will begin to feel that difference in your body as the new season establishes itself. Work that comes from alignment feels different from the inside. It has a quality of flow to it, of movement that is aided rather than resisted, of effort that is proportionate to the result it produces rather than wildly disproportionate in the way that straining always is. When you notice yourself straining, stop, breathe, return to the practice, return to the frequency, and then move again from that place toward what is being revealed one step at a time. What belongs to you in this season will not require you to force it into existence. It will require you to be present and calibrated and willing enough to receive it when it arrives. And it is arriving. The resources that belong to your next season are already in motion toward you. The opportunities that have your name on them are already forming in the spaces where your path is about to take you. You do not need to manufacture them. You need to be ready to recognize them and willing to receive them without the reflexive bracing that the old season taught you to apply to everything that felt like it might be good. You are ready. The practice is yours. The name is yours. The threshold is behind you. And everything that is coming is already moving in your direction with a specificity and a purpose that matches exactly the person you have been assembled to be through the full length of everything you have walked through to arrive at this moment. One step at a time, present, calibrated, receiving. This is how the new season begins. We are here together at the end of this message, and I want to take a moment before I say anything else to simply acknowledge that. You are here. You stayed. Through every section of this message, through the naming of the pain and the honoring of the cost and the introduction of the ancient language and the practical steps and the visualization at the threshold and the specific description of what is coming, you stayed. And I do not want to move past that without saying directly that the staying matters. Not because staying is a performance of commitment that earns you something, but because the part of you that chose to remain present through all of this, the part that kept listening even when a particular section landed in a tender place, even when the truth of something hit closer than was comfortable, even when the emotional weight of being seen this clearly required something from you that you were not entirely sure you had left to give. That part of you is the same part that has kept you going through the entire waiting season. It is the same part that prayed at midnight, the same part that protected the dream, the same part that refused, again and again, to let the cost of the journey become the final definition of the journey. And I want to say thank you to that part. Not a polite, performative thank you, a genuine one from someone who understands what it takes to show up when showing up is hard. You showed up today, and it was not an accident that you did. I want you to know something about this moment, right now, as this message draws toward its close. All across the world, as you receive these words, other chosen ones are receiving them too. Not in the same room, not in the same country, not in the same language of heart, or the same specific texture of waiting season, or the same particular shape of midnight hour, but in the same essential experience. There are people listening to this message right now in cities you have never visited, in languages that are not yours, in circumstances that look different from yours on the outside, but that feel, from the inside, remarkably familiar. People who have been carrying the same quiet weight of an unresolved purpose. People who have sat in the same specific loneliness of being surrounded and still feeling unseen. People who have prayed the same worn, smooth prayers in the dark and kept going in the morning without knowing why the keeping going still felt like the right thing to do. People who, like you, arrived at this message not by accident, but by the same invisible and deliberate movement of something greater than circumstance that has been arranging the details of this season all along. You are not alone in this. You have never been alone in this. And even in the moments when the aloneness felt most complete, most absolute, most impossible to argue with, there was a room full of chosen ones somewhere in the world, feeling the same thing at the same time, none of them knowing. About the others, all have held by the same hand. That room is real. You are in it. And the people in it with you are walking into their next season at the same time you are walking into yours. Each one carrying the name that belongs to them. Each one standing at their own threshold. Each one taking the step that the entire length of their journey has been preparing them to take. You are not walking forward alone. You are walking forward as part of something much larger than your individual story. And your individual story, the specific, unrepeatable, particular story of your waiting and your faith and your refusal to give up, is one of the threads in a tapestry that none of us can see in its entirety from where we are standing, but that is being woven with a precision and a beauty that will one day be completely visible and completely undeniable. Now I want to give you one final exercise before we close. Not a practice for the coming days, though the practices we have discussed belong to every day that follows this one. This exercise is for right now, for this specific moment at the end of this message, and it is very simple. I want you to imagine yourself holding something. Not something specific, not necessarily an object you can name, but the general weight of everything that this season has cost you. The grief of the relationships that did not develop, the weariness of the years of reaching, the frustration of the opportunities that slipped past, the quiet erosion of confidence in yourself, the heaviness of the dreams you have been carrying in silence, the weight of every midnight hour and every morning that arrived without the answer you had prayed for. Hold all of it for just a moment. Feel the actual physical weight of it in your arms, in your chest, in the set of your shoulders. Let yourself feel how much you have been carrying and for how long you have been carrying it. And now I want you to set it down, not throw it away, not pretend it was not real, not minimize what it cost or rush past what it meant. Simply set it down, the way you would set down a heavy bag after a long journey, not with drama, not with ceremony, with the quiet relief of someone who has finally arrived at a place where the carrying is no longer required. Set it down at the threshold. Leave it on the other side of the door you have already walked through. It served its purpose. It built what needed to be built in you. It braided the strands that needed to be braided. It shaped the person who is now standing, lighter and deeper and more genuinely themselves in the first moments of a new season. Honor it by setting it down, because carrying it forward is not gratitude for what it built. It is simply unnecessary weight. The new season does not require you to carry the evidence of the old one in order to prove that you have earned what is coming. Set it down, breathe, and stand up straight in the lightness of what it feels like to not be carrying it anymore. Now I want to speak to something practical, and I want to do it in the most honest and direct way I know how, because you deserve honesty and directness, and not a performance of reluctance that is actually a performance. This channel, this message, the work that goes into creating content that is this specific and this carefully prepared, it exists because of a community of people who believe that messages like this one matter enough to be supported so that they can keep reaching the people who need them. And if this message has given you something real today, something that named what was unnamed and honored what was unacknowledged and pointed toward what is coming with a specificity that felt true, then I want to ask you gently and genuinely to consider giving something back, not for me. That is genuinely not what this is about. But for the person who is going to find this message next week, or next month, or in the middle of a night that is their personal midnight hour, the darkest point of their specific waiting season, who does not yet know that a message like this exists, who has not yet heard anyone name what they have been feeling, who is sitting in their car or lying on their floor or staring at their ceiling with the weight of an unresolved purpose pressing down on them and no language for what they are experiencing. Your support is what makes it possible for this message to find that person. A donation of any amount, however small, is not a transaction. It is a bridge. It is you saying that this work matters enough to continue, that the next chosen one deserves to have someone name it for them the way this message named it for you. The link to give is available, and whatever you are able to offer is received with real gratitude. And if giving financially is not possible for you in this season, then please give what you can give. Like this video. It costs you nothing, and it tells the platform that this content is worth showing to the next person who needs it. Subscribe to this channel so that when the next message arrives, it finds you first, because the message that is coming after this one is being prepared for the specific next step of exactly where you are going. Share this video with one person whose face has come to mind while you have been listening, not because you need them to have the same experience you had, but because something in you already knows that this message was made for them too, and that the most loving thing you can do today is make sure it finds them. These actions are small. Their reach is not. And before I release you into the rest of your day and the beginning of your new season, I want to mention one more time, without pressure and without the performance of urgency, something that was introduced earlier in this message and that I believe belongs in the hands of the person who has just walked through everything we have walked through together. The genius wave is a 7. minute daily audio tool developed by Dr. James Rivers after more than 30 years of research into the brainwave states that are associated with peak human performance, deep creativity, accelerated learning, and what the science calls, and what the spirit has always known as the state of full presence and full capacity. If the genius wave found you somewhere in the middle of this message, and something in you recognized it as a yes, if there was a moment when you heard it described, and something settled in you with a quiet certainty that this is for you, then it is waiting for you in the pinned comment below. $39, 90-day money-back guarantee, no risk, only the possibility of meeting the new season with every dimension of who you are fully available and fully operational. If it is a yes, the link is there. If the timing is not right, that is also honored. But if the yes is already present, do not let hesitation delay what is already yours. You came to this message because something greater than circumstance brought you here. You stayed because the part of you that was made for more than the waiting season recognized something in these words that it had been needing someone to say. You are leaving this message different from how you arrived. Not dramatically, not with everything resolved and everything clear and everything finally in its right place, but with something named that was unnamed, something honored that was unacknowledged, something set down that has been carried too long, and something ahead of you that is real and specific and already moving in your direction. Walk into it, one step at a time, present and calibrated and receiving. You are the cycle breaker. You are the one who was assembled by the waiting. You are the one who stood in the midnight hour and did not stop believing. You are the one whose name was written before you were born, and whose time, after everything, has finally come. Go and do not look back at the weight you left at the threshold. It is finished with you, and you are finished with it. The new season is already open. Walk in. A final word, spoken not for anyone else to hear, but for you alone, in the last quiet moment before you close this message and return to your life. You were seen today. Fully and accurately seen, in the places that are hardest to see, and the places that are most tender to touch. And the one who sees you most completely, more completely than any message or any messenger ever could, has never once looked away. Not in the midnight hour, not in the waiting season, not in the moments when you were the least certain of yourself, not ever. You have been held this entire time by hands that do not tire, eyes that do not close, and a love that does not require your performance to remain present. You are loved, you are known, you are chosen, and you are exactly, precisely, perfectly on time. Go gently, go faithfully, go forward. You are already blessed.